Oh boy, Ferrari had a rough start to the season at Bahrain. Leclerc had to face yet another DNF, leaving fans with shattered dreams. It's deja vu all over again from last season. But wait, Frederick Vasseur is piping up with some confidence, claiming that Ferrari's lag behind Red Bull was due to setup choices rather than the car's overall concept. Can Ferrari actually turn this around and salvage the season? Or are we in for another gut-wrenching season of despair? Only time will tell, folks. It looks like Ferrari just got a major reality check at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and Carlos Sainz is not sugarcoating it. Despite being a solid driver, he could only manage a measly 4th place in the season opener, which is not what the Italian team was hoping for. To make matters worse, Fernando Alonso in his AMR 23 showed some serious tire wear skills and overtook Sainz in the final stages of the race. Sure, Sainz was able to fend off Lewis Hamilton in his Mercedes, but let's be real, the gap between Ferrari and Red Bull is just depressing. Max Verstappen finished a whopping 48 seconds ahead of Sainz, while his teammate Sergio Perez was only 12 seconds behind. Yikes, it's clear that Ferrari has some serious catching up to do if they want to compete with the big dogs this season. Carlos Sainz is not mincing his words. According to him, Ferrari knew right from the get-go that they were in for a tough ride at the Bahrain Grand Prix. The tire degradation they experienced during the tests on Friday was a serious concern, and it showed in the race. While Sainz managed to hold on the 4th place for a while, he had to face the hard truth that both Aston Martin and the Red Bull were just too darn fast for them. Plus, these guys were able to keep their tires from degrading as much as the Ferrari, which is a big problem. So, what's the verdict? Sainz admits that Ferrari's performance in Bahrain was a reality check, plain and simple. They have a lot of work to do in the next few weeks to figure out how to overcome this weakness. Here's hoping that they can get it together before the next race. Charles Leclerc, Sainz's teammate, didn't even finish the race. He was doing pretty well in 3rd place until an engine failure left him stranded on the track just 16 laps from the end. Yikes. To make matters worse, Leclerc had to use his first of 2 energy store of the season, which is the last free component in his allocation for the year. This is not a good sign, and it seems like Ferrari's reliability concerns from last season are carrying over into this one. Naturally, Sainz is not feeling too great about all of this. He admits that it's far from ideal, and it's definitely causing some worry among the team. However, he's keeping his fingers crossed that they can find a solution to these problems soon. Let's hope so, because Ferrari can afford to keep having these issues if they want to stay competitive. Charles Leclerc was not holding back on his criticism of Ferrari's performance as well. He's saying that the Red Bull team is on another planet compared to them, and he's not wrong. The difference in race pace between the two teams was absolutely insane in Bahrain. Leclerc managed to qualify in 3rd place and even jumped Sergio Perez at the start, but it was all for naught. Perez eventually overtook him, and Leclerc had to settle for 3rd as Verstappen and Perez sped off into the distance. To add insult to injury, Leclerc's race was ended prematurely by a loss of power that left him stranded on the track, not exactly the performance he was looking for. Leclerc didn't mince words when it came to Ferrari's lack of pace. He's saying that they are far from Red Bull, and they need to figure out what Red Bull found during the break because it's clearly something big. Ferrari may be fast in qualifying, but they're just not cutting it in the race. Leclerc is clearly frustrated and confused, and who can blame him? It's hard to understand why the car would be so different from qualifying to the race. Leclerc also noted that Ferrari's issues weren't limited to tire degradation, as they simply lacked performance compared to their rivals. This lack of pace was evident throughout the race, with Ferrari struggling to keep up with the leading pack. While the team had hoped to make gains in straight-line speed, they instead found themselves struggling in the corners, leaving Leclerc and his teammate Carlos Sainz with a lot of work to do in order to catch up to Red Bull. I think it's very difficult to separate deg from performance. I think eventually we are just too slow in the race, and because we are too slow, we are pushing a lot, and we are destroying the tires because we are slow. Red Bull seems to have so much more performance than we do in the race, so they can manage in the first few laps, and then they start to push, and so that deg is much better. Leclerc expressed disappointment and frustration with the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend, emphasizing that there were very few silver linings to be found. Despite making the right decision in qualifying and securing a good start, the Ferrari driver was unable to mask his disappointment with the team's lack of performance and reliability issues that cut short his race. The only positive thing we can take away from the weekend is that we kept those new soft tires in qualifying, he said. But honestly, that's not enough to make me happy after what happened. Leclerc admitted that they were not pushing the car to its limits, but it was still not enough to keep up with the leaders. He ultimately settled for third place, which was the right position given the circumstances, but the disappointment of not finishing the race was still there. In the end, it doesn't matter how good we were doing until that point. We need to finish the race, and unfortunately, we didn't," he lamented. But Leclerc has other worries on his head as well. The consequences of his engine failure were severe for Leclerc. The new energy store and control electronics fitted to the car cannot be recovered, leaving him with only one of each for the remaining 22 races. This is clearly not a sustainable situation, and it is likely that he will need to use at least one more of each component during the season, incurring a grid penalty in the process. Leclerc is aware of this inevitability and is already preparing himself for the potential penalty. Frederic Vasseur was left scratching his head after Charles Leclerc DNF in Bahrain. Vasseur acknowledged that the issue was unexpected, as they had not experienced any problems during the winter testing or with the other teams that use their engines. "We didn't face the same issue at all during the 6,000 or 7,000 kilometers that we did with the engines last week with the three teams. And we never had the same issue on the dyno throughout the winter. But again, we need to do a full investigation before to be able to give you a proper answer." This leaves Leclerc facing the possibility of grid penalties for engine component changes later in the season, which is far from ideal for Ferrari's hopes in the Constructors' Championship. The team already finds themselves trailing behind Red Bull by 31 points, with Aston Martin and Mercedes also standing between them and the top of the standings. Although the podium finishers in Bahrain were unsurprisingly Red Bull's Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, Alonso's third-place finish would have been an opportunity for Ferrari to grab some much-needed points. Instead, the team were left to rue their missed chance and to figure out how to prevent similar issues in the future. Vasseur also provided insight into the Italian team's performance woes, asserting that their pace deficit is not solely due to the car's design. Instead, he believes it is a matter of setup and other choices on the vehicle. He confidently stated that it is not an issue of concept and they don't need to change their direction. Ferrari's focus over the winter break was to improve their car's reliability, a weakness that had hindered them in several races last year. They experienced a problem-free preseason test, making the engine failure in Bahrain a surprise. However, Vasseur has downplayed any suggestions that it will harm Ferrari's chances. "It's never ideal to start the season with a DNF, and I would have preferred to finish, of course," he said. "But I want to be consistent in my position. I told the team before the Bahrain test 2 weeks ago that the championship won't be over in Bahrain, no matter what the result is." He emphasized that the team had gone through different situations in the past, and what's essential now is to conduct a thorough analysis of this situation and come up with a robust response. The ultimate goal is to have a clear picture of why they failed and how they can improve their performance going forward. Do you reckon Ferrari has what it takes to make a jaw-dropping comeback this season? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more updates.